Hello and welcome to another Scholomance Academy preview video here on the Tempo Strategy channel. Today we'll be taking a look at our top 5 most powerful cards from the entire expansion. It was very tough to pick just 5 cards to focus on since the overall power level of the expansion is so high, but we're very interested to hear what you think of the ones we've settled on. Be sure to remember to subscribe to the channel and turn notifications on in order to stay up to date with all of our Hearthstone content, and let's begin. The biggest risk to include in this top 5 is without a doubt the first card we'll be talking about, Vectis. This card has insane potential to be absolutely broken, but it also doesn't have an obvious spot it fits into in the meta. In the previous meta, there weren't a whole lot of Death Rattle minions being played in the first place, and the Death Rattle minions which were being played were mostly slower defensive ones like Kartut Defender. That sort of Death Rattle minion doesn't work perfectly with a card like Vectis, since Vectis primarily wants to be a tempo card. And additionally, there aren't any particular standout Death Rattle minions from the new set either. Despite all of those downsides, Vectis just screams that it is massively overstated and is almost meant to be broken in a similar way to the original version of Necreum Apothecary. It is a complete mystery where in the meta Vectis will end up, but at some point in the lifespan of Scholomance Academy, it will be a key card in a meta-defining deck. Next up is Jandis Barov. It is very rare that a card which is primarily just a pile of stats is one of the top cards from an expansion, but this card is about as aggressively statted as can possibly be. Before adding the downside of the card's effect, it is genuinely just 2 5-drops for 5 mana with an extra 2/1 added on for free. And while it is obviously a major problem that one of your minions dies to any source damage, the secretive part of the card is actually very useful. Initially it might seem as if you always have to pick the smaller minion to apply this downside to, but that isn't quite as set in stone as it seems, due to the fact that it is always obvious that you are incentivized to weaken your smaller minion, and that can lead to some very awkward trades from your opponent if you occasionally weaken the bigger minion instead. Overall, Jandis Barov is likely to fit into every sort of rogue archetype, and to shine especially bright in the more aggressive list as a top-end card. Its future as a mage card is a little more uncertain, but it could still make its way into more minion-based mage archetypes like Highlander Mage. Our third card on this list might just be one of the scariest aggro cards ever printed. True Aim Crescent is a 1-mana hunter and demon hunter weapon with the stats of Light's Justice, but it adds the text, after your hero attacks a minion, your minions attack it too. This effect essentially allows you to push face damage every turn in the early game before you make your trades, as the effect triggers even if a minion has already attacked. This chip damage would be insane in a face hunter deck if that is a playable archetype again, synergizing especially well with aggro Death Rattle cards like Leper Gnome and Kobold Sand Trooper, but it will also be a very nice tool in aggressive demon hunter archetypes. Those demon hunter decks do very much need to trade as the board matters a lot to them, but they also often shift to a face plan in the mid game, which makes them love pushing chip damage as often as possible as well. We expect this card to be a staple in any aggressive hunter or demon hunter archetype, and it could also even see play in more mid-rangey decks like Highlander Hunter. The old version of Innervate was one of Hearthstone's most iconic, but also most complained about cards, and despite the fact that it has Overload 2 attached to it in this reprint, it has a lot of potential to feel very broken again. The first and most obvious upside to this card, which was not available for the old 2-mana Innervate, is the existence of Exotic Mount Seller, which is already a staple in essentially every build of Druid before Lightning Bloom is released. On top of the obvious upside to simply throwing this into a spell Druid list, which it clearly fits into, the card is also just a great tempo generation tool in most Shaman and Druid decks, and can decide a game so fast that the overload mana on the following turn doesn't even matter. One more application of Lightning Bloom, which is definitely very relevant, is the way in which it can enable combo decks such as Malagos Druid in their attempts to kill opponents in turn, an endeavor which often costs more than 10 mana. Lightning Bloom seems to be everything that Druid could ever want in a card, and will likely lead to Druid being one of the best classes at the beginning of the expansion. While the card is a little less perfect for Shaman decks, we still expect it to see plenty of play there as well, simply due to its overall power level. And with that, we have arrived at our number 1 card from the Scholomance Academy expansion, Secret Passage. While all the other cards in this top 5 can make their way into either multiple classes or at least multiple different archetypes, Secret Passage appears to be solely designed for aggro and tempo rogue decks. This card might be the most powerful and efficient cost hand refill tool ever printed, maybe rivaled only by Divine Favor. Not only does this card give you access to 5 cards on any turn for only 1 mana, but you also don't even have to sacrifice anything for it, as you get your old hand back the next turn, while also keeping hold of any cards you generate during the turn where your hand is swapped out. This card alone allows for any aggressive rogue deck to play a much lower curve, including far more 1-drops and burn cards than in the past, fast, since you are guaranteed to run out of resources at least one turn later than you normally would have. Our final assessment is that Secret Passage might be the best overall card from this already powerful set, that Tempo Rogue might be the top deck in the new meta, and that the new build might prove to be strictly better than any Tempo Rogue which still attempts to run Galakron. That brings us to the end of our look at the top 5 cards from Scholomance Academy. What do you think of our choices? Anything on this list which you don't agree is particularly useful? And what cards that we didn't discuss do you think were the most deserving of making it onto our list? Remember to like the video as well as subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so that you are able to easily stay up to date with all of the Scholomance Academy content we will be releasing very shortly. See you next time!